Hello, good afternoon, everybody. So thanks to anybody joining us live on Twitter or YouTube. I'm here with Della, Hudson, and we're going to have a conversation today about how accountants can be more commercially focused in the new world. And my name is Jim Scott. I'm the Managing Director of Accountancy for Iris Software. And if you want to join in, if you have any questions, if you have any comments that you'd like to make, you can tweet us at Iris Accountants. And we'll try to answer those during the course of the session. So Della, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Della Hudson. I'm a chartered accountant, the owner of 2 practices, the mother of 2 teams, which some might think is more challenging, and the author of 2 books for accountants and business owners. So thanks for having me on, Jim.
Thank you very much. So where do we start with a conversation like this? I guess the last year has been something that none of us have ever experienced. It's thrown an awful lot at everybody, personally and professionally, and particularly I think for accountants. So accountants have been having to deal not just with their own challenges of productivity, maintaining productivity when their workforce is dispersed back into the home, but also their personal lives and the challenges that their customers have faced as well. And I think that's probably a good place to start. So I'd love to get your views on how that's been for accountants, how it's been for you personally, and what you think the future holds in that regard as things start to relax a little bit and offices start to reopen.
I think the pandemic has really split the accountancy profession between those with the technology and the ability to work remotely and those who are very much office-based. So those of us, we have a practice that was set up for people to work at home occasionally. So it was no big deal to switch that to working at home permanently. My old practice and the second practice I actually set up in the pandemic because so many of these office-based accountants were unable to function and went AWOL, and running an accountancy practice is something that I find relatively easy. So it's not easy, but it's relatively easy when you've done it before. So those with the technology were able to work remotely. You can use practice management software to track your team and communicate what work needs doing, where, when, and so on. And also the technology to communicate with clients through webinars like this, or with decent emails and newsletters and things like that. So just more of the stuff that some people are already going, but for others it's a whole new learning curve. It's a new world of technology that they maybe hoped to avoid, or at least to postpone. I think I saw McKinsey said that it's forced accountants to accelerate 10 years in their use of technology, or that might be businesses generally. So it's a huge overnight leap, and some people have done it more easily than others.
Yeah, I agree completely, and I think it is it transcends different industries. But I think for accountants, it's been a real challenge because not only are they having to do it, but their customers are in the same situation as well. And you mentioned communication there, which I think has been both a beneficiary and a victim of the last 12 months. So from an accountant's point of view, maybe just can we touch on how vital you think communication is, how that's changed maybe, and what you think accountants can do differently moving forward to improve communication with clients, and what the benefits of that might be?
Yeah, absolutely. My main role is coaching other accountants, and through the pandemic, almost all of them have just been overwhelmed with communications incoming from clients who come off the 5 o'clock briefing and immediately pick up the phone to the accountant to say, what does this mean for me? And when they don't get a response, because it's after 5 o'clock and hopefully accountants aren't in the office, whether that's a home office or a physical office, so they then email, and so multiple requests for information from clients, and then follow up the next day, and it's hugely overwhelming for accountants. So the way I've been helping people to take control of that is that you get out your preferred form of communication, either a webinar or an email, immediately or as soon as you can after the briefing. This is what we know. This is what we don't know. And it's very hard and therefore very, very rare for accountants to admit they don't know something. Because usually we're ahead on tax and so on. We're used to being ahead in the legislation. So this is what we know, this is what we don't know yet. And we will keep you informed, which is the polite way of saying, don't call us, we'll call you. So accountants have had to take control of their communications and get information out before that they're overwhelmed by the incoming communication.
That's been more of a kind of proactive approach to their entire customer base, and then targeted conversations or targeted interventions thereafter to make it personal to the individual company. Okay, that's really helpful. So I guess the next thing I want to talk about is moving on. The we're kind of here to talk about is the commercial side of things. So I saw some statistics a couple of months ago now, which were quite troubling. They were ONS statistics, and they were for business births and business deaths in the fourth quarter of last calendar year, and there was a 24% increase in business creations and a 37% increase in business deaths, and they were only reported to IDBR, so that you have to assume that the reality was worse than that. And also, as we begin to come off life support from government and so on and so forth, a logical conclusion would be that that's probably going to get worse before it gets better. So I think there's probably two things to consider for accountants. One is the fact that their existing customer base could be materially affected by that. So there could be a significant number of their existing clients go away in one form or another. And also that there's going to be an opportunity for them to get a better hold on the new business creations. There's going to be more business creations, more businesses set up, and people changing businesses than there has been in an awfully long time. And in order to be able to maintain maybe current revenues or current customer numbers, they're going to have to be out there in the marketplace winning some of these customers. So I'd be fascinated to get your view on whether or not that's been evidenced in what you've seen over the last few months, and more importantly, what you think accountants need to be doing in order to be able to nurture their existing customer base, retain as many of them as they can, and also win new customers out in the open market.
Yeah, I think real life is reflecting those statistics, which obviously it should, because that's where they've come from. But what I'm seeing is much the same, and it happens in any recession. So this bit of it, in a way, is something that a lot of us have been through before. So I set up one practice in a recession. I set up a second one in a pandemic. So this the old stuff, adapted a bit. But looking at existing clients, we've got those who are thriving, and you just need to make sure, is that because for some reason they are doing better during lockdown, and do they need to tweak that and prepare for post-lockdown and things like that? Or is it going to continue, in which case that's great. There are those who are only just surviving. Some of them, like restaurants surviving on takeaway, there's a change to be made as we come out of lockdown and they go back to what they used to do. But then do they continue the takeaway service as well? If they've got the kitchen space, then they've got two income streams. So they haven't got the kitchen space. Do they want to do in-house or deliveries, or some sort of mixture of both? So how does that affect their businesses? And then you've got the ones who are just limping through, dependent on government finances, zombie companies in a way, who as soon as that money ends, they will have to make hard decisions about redundancies and so on, potentially winding up their own business. And those are the ones that in some ways need most TLC but can least afford it. And I think this is where most accountants, we've done very well financially through lockdown, because we've been in great demand. But this is when we need to be a bit more compassionate and help people to run down, wind up their businesses, adapt their businesses to, scale them down to something sustainable, whatever. This is where we come in as true business advisors. So that's the existing clients. And then you've got this whole new potential of new businesses starting up. And it's people with redundancy money potentially have decided they'll be better off self-employed. But there's also some where it'll just sort of eke out the redundancy money, and then they'll go back into employment at a future date. So they need to be set up one way, and there are others who they've got a great business idea and they need to be set up with a view to scaling. But either of them have a lot of initial questions. So what we're doing is I'm writing a one-day startup business course for new business owners. It's a way that I can reach a lot of potential business owners in bulk. I can help them, but it's also a useful piece of marketing. So it's not entirely altruistic. And I think that's the sort of thing that a lot of accountants can be doing. You might not want to write a whole course on it. You might want to do a guest talk somewhere, or you might want to write some articles for your local paper about how to start up a business, or just share information on social media, showing your business expertise and helping people at the same time. So I think there's a lot of potential in those new businesses, and the more help we give them, the more chance they have of surviving, however long, whether short term till they sort of change their plans, or longer term till they realize their ambitions.
Okay, well, that's really helpful. And I think for me, I've been a small business owner. I've had many small businesses, and despite what the market will have you believe in, however easy bookkeeping or accounting software is to use, as a small business owner, that was never, I not once, not on any given day did I ever think, I can't wait to get home and open my bookkeeping software and do my accounts. So I think as a small business owner, given the circumstance, or any business owner, given the circumstances that we now have as the economy starts to reopen and so on and so forth, and businesses are being set up, or they're in trouble, or they're in a challenging situation, I would suggest that there's never been a more important or more valuable role for the accountant to play in providing their core services, and in particular their advice and their guidance on how things should be set up or managed or done differently. And that, I guess, it leads into the conversation about advisory services, because a lot of, there's been a lot of talk in the industry for a long time about advisory services, and I think for a lot of accountants, they've often struggled with the journey from providing their core services, their compliance-led services, into advisory. Do you think this gives them an opportunity that maybe hasn't existed before to do that, and maybe package things slightly differently, or do things slightly differently, and move into advisory a little bit more than they have in the past? I
think, yes, there's more opportunity, but there has always been opportunity, and it doesn't suit every accountant to do that. Mm-hmm. So some accountants are quite happy with compliance, and there's plenty of work to be done on the good compliance side, because you can't offer advisory services without good compliance in the first place. Yeah, so it's not an either or, it's an and. I love doing the advisory side. I'd much rather help grow the beans than just count them. That's my passion. But if you don't want to offer advisory services, then I suggest you work alongside a business coach or somebody who can help with that sort of thing. So you just provide the management accounts, the numerical side of it, while somebody else gives the other advice. So there are all sorts of different ways of doing it. And there's all sorts of software out there that helps accountants to have that initial conversation. But I think there's a lot that comes from having run a business yourself. As you know, you pick up so much when you're running that business, especially a small business where you do everything from sort of getting the business in to clearing the drains to whatever else needs doing. So I think having run a business yourself, and accountants who run their accountancy practice as a business, there's a lot of very simple advice that we can give. And if you can't, then partner with somebody who can.
Okay, that's great advice. So I guess it also begs the question that, which comes back to being more commercially focused, is if you're out there trying to find new customers, how do you find the right customers for you? So if you, for example, if you do want to go down the advisory route, or you don't want to go down the advisory route, have you got any tips on how to find the right clients for you as a business?
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing is to decide what sort of client is ideal for you. So it might be that you like technology businesses. It might be that you have the patience to work with clients who are very much manually based. You might, so you can niche along the type of business you work with. You can niche along how far through their life cycle they are. Some people like working with startups. Some people like working with scale ups, and others just like the mature plateaued business that just ticks along and sort of it isn't as challenging, but you're still helping people in that way. And then, of course, you can niche on whatever software they're using if you have a preference yourself. To small practices here, bigger practices, you probably have departments that run on each type of software, and you can cover many more specialisms. But smaller accountants, you would usually choose one niche, and so you have your hunting niche, as Amanda Watts calls it, and that's where you actively market. And then you have a second niche, which is where you operate, which may be that you only work with clients in that hunting niche, or you might just take a much broader range of people, because people often think if they're marketing in one place, then they can't take on client. What do they do if clients call them who aren't in that niche? But you tend to still pick it up. We used to run all sorts of events, business advice events. I pretty much only marketed our business advice services, and we picked up loads of compliance work as well. So marketing one thing doesn't exclude the rest. So first of all, you need to be sure who you're looking for, and then create an avatar, and all your marketing work then becomes it's built around that individual avatar that you've created. When I wrote my first book, I had 2 individuals. I even gave them names, and I wrote the book explaining everything that I thought they'd need to set up an accountancy practice. And you need to do your marketing the same way, is to have an individual, they're looking to start up a business. So what information do they need? Where are they going to look for that information, and things like that? So it's just putting yourself in their shoes, and most of us have a website, so make sure your website answers a lot of those questions. It's all about what the client needs. But first you need to get them onto your website. And for us, that was social media. About a third of my leads came in through social media, predominantly Twitter. I know a lot of accountants use LinkedIn, but Twitter worked well for me. But you'll find where you're comfortable. So try a few things, but don't worry about using every single medium there is.
Okay, no, that again, I think it's each to their own, isn't it? And a lot of people feel comfortable using certain mediums and less comfortable using other mediums. So I think you've got to find trial and error, really. You've got to find what works for you and your business. What fundamentals do you think have, we spoke earlier, there's been a 10-year acceleration in the marketplace for accountants, depending on which article you read, but let's just take that as a hypothesis. What do you think the key things are that are different now as a consequence of that for accountants?
It's using cloud-based software that can be accessed from anywhere in the world. It's easier to share information with clients if they've got cloud-based bookkeeping software. If you've got cloud-based practice software, tax software, account software, then it's easier to share amongst the individuals in your business when you're working on that. And the practice management suites, and of course Iris has acquired Centre, who do that beautifully. So you can then track the work through. And of course, once people are on these cloud-based suites, you can automate a lot of your workflow, a lot of your reminders, a lot of your admin is just done for you. You can either send out automated emails, or you can use it to trigger you to pick up the phone if that's the way that you and or your clients prefer to operate. So it doesn't dictate everything you do. You customize it to suit what you want to do, the way you want to work, and the way your clients want to work.
Great, excellent. So I suppose as we kind of come towards the back end of the conversation, have you got any, what would be your top 3 areas of focus or top tips that you think that, if somebody was to take away from this conversation, 3 or 4 things, what would they be?
There was actually on the Clubhouse last night, James Ashford raised the hairdresser thing. Through lockdown, women in particular, but also men, we now understand the value of our hairdressers and our grey hair or our overgrown hair, whichever. And so in the midst of lockdown, I'd have sold my firstborn child for a hairdresser. No, not quite. But we realised how much we need our hairdressers, and therefore how much they are truly worth. And I think a lot of businesses have realised how much they need their accountants. So now is the time for accountants to look at their pricing to make sure that we can afford the time, the resources, whatever we need in order to help those clients going forwards. So look after ourselves means that we can help our clients better by doing more. So get your pricing right, get your clients right. So make sure that you've got the right clients on board, which is this hunting niche and the operational niche again. And probably more important than that, accountants have been working so hard, is get your holiday booked in, even if it's only a week at home with a bubble bath and a face mask in lieu of a spa day or whatever, or a long walk instead of an exotic holiday. Just accountants need to make sure they and their team are having their holidays, their breaks, the recovery time.
Great. No, I agree completely, because it's one of the industries that really hasn't had any respite. If anything, the accountants have, as you say, have worked harder than ever over the last year, and probably have some hard yards ahead as well, and some challenging and uncomfortable conversations. There's a lot of people still are still really challenged by the situation. A lot of clients are still very challenged by the situation, and will continue to be as we go into the balance of 2021. Anything else you think we should cover on this conversation, Della, or any questions you've got for me?
No, I know you've been a business owner before. So how do you find the situation with your business owner hat on rather than you're working with accountants one?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think as a business owner, I think it depends on the size of business, of course, but certainly for the smaller clients, I think they are as concerned about their people as they are about the business, and they want to make sure that as the business recovers, that they're able to look after their people, which again, the accountant has an important role to play there. But I think there's a lot of concern, a lot of worry, and a lot of reliance on the accountant. So as I said before, there was never a point as a small business owner where I ever thought, I can't wait to get home and start doing the accounts. It was always, I want the accountant to take care of the accounts, and I want to run the business because that's what I'm there to do. So I think what's really important here is that we value and we understand the value of the service that we offer as an accountant to the client, because the client values this far more than you think they do, which I guess comes back to your pricing point as well. And we should never shortchange the value of the work we do, whether that be compliance work or whether it be advisory work or something in between, because for the end customer, for the client, it can be the difference between them being very confident and very comfortable and less stressed and being at the end of their tether. So, you know, we've got to get the communication right with the client. We've got to get the product right. We've got to get the relationship right in terms of, you know, making sure that they are the right clients for the practice. But we should never lose sight of the value I think that we deliver to the client. So that's I think important from both sides of the relationship, from the business owner and from the accountant as well. So yeah, that would be my 2 pence on that one.
Yeah, and I think you're right. It's the relationship between the accountant and the business owner. And whilst accountants aren't renowned for our communication skills, I think we don't do too badly on a one-to-one basis usually, and we do care about our clients as people and their dreams.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you know what? I think the fundamentally the relationship between accountant and client is based on trust, and from the customer's perspective, the client's perspective, they implicitly trust the accountant or they would move on. So, you know, that's fun. That, you know, that's the crux of the relationship. So I think to build on that and to reinforce that and build relationships out beyond the core services and core functions of the business is really critical. And I think that'll become more important as time goes on and as the market becomes more competitive as well.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. No, that's been a great conversation. Thank you very much for your time. I know we're going to be doing a lot more of these. Hopefully we'll get a chance to chat again. I'm assuming that I won't always be the person asking the questions. There'll be other people involved. So, but hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you have any questions or if you want to follow up on anything that's been said today, you can contact Della or me via Twitter or via other social media channels. And thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Jim.